Hello everyone. Razorblade Mango here. And today I am here to talk about Marvel's Spider-Man 2, which is, of course, the latest game from Insomniac Games, published by Sony Interactive Entertainment. Quick note about how the Spider-Man 2 coverage will be handled on the channel. Originally, Richard and I had planned on recording a full-on spoiler discussion of the game, where we just do a deep dive into every little facet of the game. And unfortunately, we were actually in the middle of recording the spoiler cast when I got interrupted and I had to cut it off early. And we had actually just finished talking about the story, and we were in the middle of talking about the gameplay, and then I had to go. And unfortunately, Richard and I don't have great schedules when it comes to coming together and recording stuff these days. It was going to be a while longer before we could sit back down and talk about the game in full with one another. With his blessing, I came up with the idea of look, let's just release the audio that has to do with the story, because that is where we obviously have the most to talk about with the game. And I will go ahead and just do a solo video about the game, talking about it spoiler free and all the facets there. So fair warning, you might hear some points that will be repeated in the spoiler cast that I'm going to talk about today. And that the spoiler cast, the story spoiler discussion, will not go live until next week, because I'm still in the process of editing that. It's almost done, but I wanted to come here and do a discussion of the game by myself with you guys, spoiler free. So if you haven't played the game yet, don't worry about it. I'm not going to spoil anything. I'm also only going to show, as usual, just footage of the opening hour or so of the game. So Marvel's Spider-Man 2. I will cut right to the chase. Besides, from a financial standpoint, I think it's fair to say that this has been PlayStation's worst year in ages. I mean, like I mentioned, there's only been one single-player game of any consequence this year. They had that really piss-poor showcase earlier this year. They've just had PR blunder after PR blunder this year. And they still continue to be, typical arrogant Sony by not communicating with their hardcore audience, i.e. people like me. And after the really wretched creative and PR year that PlayStation have had, I was really hoping Spider-Man 2 would be a big winner in my eyes. And unfortunately, I came away mostly underwhelmed by the experience. And the best way that I can describe Marvel's Spider-Man 2 is that I think it is a condom game. And this is something that I've talked about before on the channel. And what do I mean by a condom game? In my opinion, a condom game is something that it's a game that you play and then you throw it away and you never think about it again. And that's exactly what it was with Marvel Spider-Man 2 for me. Like a condom, you use it, you maybe have fun with it, and then you throw it away and you never think about it again. That sums up Marvel Spider-Man 2 pretty perfectly to me. So I'll start with the area where I have the least amount of things to say, which are the graphics and the music. It doesn't take Digital Foundry to figure out that this is a gorgeous looking game. It really is. The colors are much more vibrant compared to the first game. I noticed that immediately. The load times and the fast travel system that they have are insane. It really does work as advertised, and I tested it extensively, and I did not have a problem at all fast traveling from one side of the map to the other, and then quickly going back and forth and going to another corner and going to another area. And all of it was just seamless, and it never buckled once, which is damn impressive. As far as the visuals, I have two complaints. One, I think the animation for the faces sometimes looks bad. I'm not saying all the time, just sometimes it doesn't look right. And I'm mainly talking about MJ and Harry, which those two, just something about their faces at times just doesn't look quite right. And then there's the issue with the bugs, which I did encounter some bugs here or there. Thankfully, they weren't anything crazy or something that couldn't be fixed with a, clicking the restart from checkpoint thing. I think it's more of a case of bugs that were funny and, they made me laugh more than they pulled me out of the experience or that were frustrating. I think the worst it ever got for me was there was one section, and Dog, my friend, personal friend, Doggy Bone Gaming, he had the same exact bug that I did, where there's a section where Miles gets a new power, but the moment where you're supposed to use it for the first time, it freezes and it won't let you progress. And you're putting in the right button prompt to do it, but the game is just not recognizing it. So you kind of have to restart and do it again, which kind of sort of ruins the moment. As far as the music goes, it's okay. It's serviceable. It gets the job done. It's a pretty typical blockbuster action score. It's nothing really amazing. There aren't really any big memorable melodies or anything like that. Like, it's just serviceable. It's just there. It's just there kind of as background noise. It's like, it's not offensive, but it's not very memorable either. And that's really all I have to say about the audio and visuals of the game. So now we get into the story/writing, which this is where I mainly have problems with the game, because I think the storytelling has taken a significant step down compared to the first game and Miles Morales. And even there, I didn't think those games had amazing stories, but they were quite good. And they got the job done. They were impactful, and I liked both of them quite a bit. This one, unfortunately, is just not it. And writing and pacing are the big issues here. And what's strange is that for all the complaints that the game is too short, I actually think it's too long. The idea of a main story you can finish in 15 to 20 hours is perfectly fine with me, but it's how Marvel Spider-Man 2 uses that time that I have a problem with. And I think it falls into that classic sequel pitfall of focusing on way too many things and failing to develop any of them to a satisfactory degree. I think there is just way too much bloat and useless playable sections in this game that create a stop and start pacing in the main story, because there are too many times in this game where it stops you dead in your tracks and goes, no, you won't play as Spider-Man now. You will play as somebody else, and it will be a lot slower and a lot more boring. The obvious ones that come to mind are the MJ sections, which obviously somebody at Insomniac did not see the criticism that we don't want these sections in Spider-Man, that they're not fun, that they just completely take us away from what we're here for, which is the superhero power fantasy. Let me make this abundantly clear to everybody at Insomniac, just so there's no confusion. I do not want to play as MJ in these games. I don't want to do it. Her sections are boring. Her gameplay is bad. And I understand that Insomniac wants to make MJ, a bigger part of the plot. They want to make her have her own agency and everything. But every time they try desperately to portray MJ as this, wow, look at this badass chick who can hold her own against threats and stuff like that, it just makes her look stupid. It makes her look so much worse when they try to make her into this, not exactly a superhero, but really pushing it as far as the bounds of reality with what she is capable of. I don't want to see her driving around on her stupid motorcycle, wielding her stupid gun. I don't want to see it. It's not fun. There are quite a few sections in this game where it just goes, oh, you'd like to be Spider-Man? Well, too bad. Let's have you literally pick up trash in Peter's apartment. Oh, you like being Miles Morales and doing his electric powers and everything? Too bad. You're going to enjoy a very lengthy sequence where you're walking around a glorified science museum. Oh, you'd like to play as Spider-Man and doing Nope, sorry. You play as MJ, you do this really obnoxiously long stealth section where you're just doing shit that could be done in a cutscene, like a 30-second to a minute cutscene. Why? Why is this here? Other than to artificially extend the length. It's not fun. It's not enjoyable. Please stop doing this, Insomniac. Another problem too is that the writing is so bland. This is a very typical Insomniac problem. The people Insomniac always bring into their writer's room write the most forgettable, mediocre drivel you can possibly imagine. It's almost like everybody they hire as writers are afraid of writing anything edgy or risky that might offend somebody. It feels like it's gone through 3 different boardrooms of suits where they all have to approve the dialogue. It's like all these people don't want one of these trash websites like Kotaku or The Gamer to write an article about them saying that their portrayal of something is problematic or lines of dialogue or offensive to a particular group. I think even beyond that, it's just the writers that they employ they're not clever. They're not clever writers. They don't have dialogue that really has that oomph to it. And all the character work, all the themes, all the emotional beats are delivered with the subtlety of a sledgehammer. There are just no surprises in this story whatsoever as well. Nearly everything that happens in this game, I called years ago that it was going to happen. And surprise, surprise, it's all here. At any time that they might flirt with doing something a little bit darker or unexpected, nope, they pussy out and go for just the safest way possible. Insomniac really needs to hire some better writers just for these games, because again, just bland, forgettable drivel. Let's talk about the gameplay. Combat is a strange contradiction in this game. The combat has less options compared to the first game because they've gimped the gadget system in this. But at the same time, it also feels sloppier and more needlessly complicated. Because this game has never really had the smoothest combat. This series has never really had the smoothest combat. So the obvious inspiration that it takes from is the Arkham trilogy, where that combat, though, I feel like is just much smoother. The fluidity is a lot better. The timing of it is a lot tighter. And I feel like Rocksteady created a really good flow with that free flow combat. And I think the combat in those games are so good that I've actually, when I do the New Game Plus, especially for Arkham City and Arkham Knight, it takes away the notification above Batman's head when an enemy is going to attack you. So you always have to be paying attention to the enemy animations during the New Game Plus. And I think that's a really unique challenge. And it works in those games because the readability of all the enemies around you is just so clear and precise. The visual language of the Arkham trilogy, as far as the combat, is superb. That's not the case with the Spider-Man games, where it always feels like when Spider-Man is fighting a lot of different enemies that are a mix of like melee and gunmen and heavies, it just turns into a mess. It just turns into complete, just utter chaos. And what doesn't help is that in this game, they add a new mechanic, which is this parrying system. And I greatly dislike this parrying system. It fucks up the flow of what is already a sloppy combat system. For all their talk about, we've added so many options to stealth and it's so much better, I actually think stealth has taken a step back because there are less gadgets and there's more of a focus on stringing up enemies, doing the perfect, you web them and you throw them onto the ceiling or on a web line. And it's just the AI is just comically stupid. It's like the enemies have just like limited vision to where they can't see things that are above their eyebrows. Because most of these enemies, if they just look up and see if their friends are being webbed up, it's like, oh shit, Spider-Man is here. Let's go on high alert. But that very rarely ever happens unless you like really go out of your way to put in an enemy and web them up in an enemy's line of sight. Thankfully, it's not all bad as far as the gameplay and the design, because I think an area where this game is a vast improvement over the first game is the world activities and exploration. World activities are much better designed, laid out, and paced. I think they kind of realized maybe a quarter of the way through this game that it's like, oh, people don't really like the sections where you're forced to do a side activity just so you can find out, like, it's like, oh, now it's been added to the map. Now you can do the side activity. And they do a few of those in the beginning of Spider-Man 2, but it's nowhere near as obnoxious as the first game with its fucking terrible radio tower system. Thankfully, this game, it encourages much more organic exploration. And I actually had a lot of fun traveling the world and finding things for myself and having them marked on my map as I found them. I quite enjoyed that. And another thing, too, is I really like the UI in this game. I think it's very clean. It's a night and day difference between this and Starfield's mess of menus. Also, as always, the web slinging in this game is awesome. I love it. That is something that has always been great in these games, and they actually have improved it even further in this one by adding a few special abilities that you can unlock that allow you to do specific things while navigating and web swinging around the city. And they also add it where you can really tone down the web assist, and it adds a lot more gravity, and you have to think about the physics of where you're web swinging in order to pull off the cool Spider-Man shit you can do. I really do highly recommend, if you're going to play this game for the first time, turn down the web assist to something like 5 or 6, just so you can get that further feeling of physics playing into the equation when you are web slinging as Spider-Man. And I really think that added so much to the game. And I wish as a default they had just tuned down the web assist to something like 5 or 6. And it doesn't really fit Spider-Man, but I love the wingsuit. I think the wingsuit is so much fun to use. I loved flying through the tunnels in this game. It feels so much fun. That is an area where Insomniac just has perfected at this point. And the way they're able to do it in this game is, it feels so like clean and organic. It doesn't feel like it misses a beat as far as changing from web slinging to then running up a building to then diving off to then jumping into a wingsuit and gliding through the tunnel and then going back again to the web slinging. And all of that shit is so fucking cool, man. I love the traversal in these games. That is the saving grace for the gameplay in this game. Speaking of side activities, let's talk about them, because I think the side activities in this game are a pretty good improvement over the first game. And the cool thing too is that almost all of them have really good narrative payoffs where they actually felt like they were worthwhile in this game. And I really enjoyed most of the side quests in this game. I wasn't really crazy about the ones you get from Miles' school outside of 1. I thought those were just lame. But I really enjoyed the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man requests that you can get. I thought almost all of those side activities were great. There's 2 in particular that really got a unexpected emotional rise out of me. It got more emotion out of me than the main story did, which I'm not gonna lie. I kind of choked up on a few of these side missions. I really enjoyed them. Some of them I think are good outside of the side missions. Things like photo ops I really enjoyed. I thought that was a cool way to kind of get you to explore the city and see some of the weirder sites that were around. I liked the Mysteriums that have, Mysterio, and you go in there and they basically are they're basically the timed training sections, this game's version of those. I liked the hunter bases, which I did not expect because I really didn't care for the abundance of bases in the first game. And even in Miles Morales, I thought they were just kind of meh, but I liked them more here. And then you get into more mixed things like the spider bots, which I thought there were way too many of, the unidentified targets, which that really wore out its welcome, even though it encourages you to use the wind tunnels, which I normally like. Some of the collectibles are just kind of like, eh. There's only really one that I greatly, like I hated. There's only one side activity that I hated, but I can't say what it is out of spoilers. But it's the one that comes at like the very end of the game. It's the final one to be unlocked, and I fucking hated it. I thought it was terrible. Yeah, that's pretty much it as far as what I gotta say about Marvel Spider-Man. And again, you'll hear more when the spoilery story discussion releases next week. But yeah, closing thoughts. I have a concern with Insomniac that they're going to become the Marvel and Ratchet and Clank studio. And despite everything I've said about them, I really do wish they would move on to a new franchise. I really would like for them to try their hand at a new IP again. And Wolverine, that doesn't count. And even there, I'm more concerned about Wolverine now than I was before Spider-Man 2 came out. I really would like for them to try something new, something weirder, because the way they're going with how bland their writing is and how non-creative their gameplay is, I'm not convinced that their future games are going to impress me outside of, once again, the technical capabilities. Because I really feel like that's mostly what Insomniac has going for this generation. It's just very impressive tech. That's great. How about the writing and the level design match your guys' technical brilliance? With the announcement of the Game Awards and all the fucking nominations that this got, and not that it really matters, but it will influence them seeing that they're getting so much approval for their lack of creativity in the gameplay department and the writing. Because if people consider something like this the pinnacle of what the AAA video game industry is capable of, oh my god, we're so fucked. And I will close this video out by saying that this game reminds me a lot of something a mutual friend of mine once said about how we were having this debate about video games and how she thought that video games were creatively lacking because a lot of them don't rely on somebody or a small group of people's strong creative vision. She was talking about how there really aren't that many auteurs in the video game industry, and that a lot of the games in the big AAA companies, they just feel so bland because they're just a conglomerate of like all these mashed together ideas from all these different people. It doesn't feel like it comes from a single person. It's not somebody's creative vision or design. I disagreed with her at the time a lot because I still felt like, even though there are these big companies, I still feel like they have distinct styles and visions. For example, when you're playing a Rockstar game, you're playing a Rockstar game. When you're playing a game from Square Enix, for better or for worse, you're playing a Square Enix game. Now that we're getting to this point in the AAA video game industry where there is less creative risk because these budgets are getting so goddamn expensive now, I'm kind of leaning more towards agreeing with her that video games are just really losing their creative vision. And I really wish we would get more games from, singular people that employ a small team, because to me, those are the games, even if I don't really care for them all that much, and in certain cases, I still would prefer that over something like this that is just so bland and generic. I would take something that is a really strong creative vision, but I have problems with, over something that is serviceable, but is just so forgettable. Say what you will about something like The Last Guardian, which is a game that I have mixed feelings on, but that is a game that I remember all these years later because that is from Fumito Ueda's distinct vision. Like, when you're playing The Last Guardian, you are playing a Fumito Ueda game. That's not the case with Insomniac. That's not the case with a lot of big AAA companies. And sure, like I mentioned, there are some big AAA companies that I feel like do have a distinct style. But unfortunately, that is becoming an exception, not the rule. Unfortunately, I just feel like so many people are going to eat up Marvel Spider-Man 2 and not really think about it and praise it, and that will just further embolden Insomniac to keep going down the path that they're going. And at some point, they'll probably lose me. Because this is not at all the Insomniac that was during the PS2 generation. It's not. They've been more like this than they haven't in their company history, as far as I'm concerned. Would I recommend Marvel Spider-Man 2? Honestly, I guess I won't cop out with a answer. So between a yes and a no, I would honestly say no. I would say maybe just if you really want to get into the series, maybe don't start here. I don't know why you would start here, but play like Miles Morales instead. I think that game is so much better. I think there are other AAA big PlayStation games that are a lot better than this one. I was throwing some recommendations to friend of the channel, Ian Waffles, a few weeks ago because he had just gotten a PS5, and I was telling him like, oh yeah, and we were talking about Marvel Spider-Man 2, and I was like, oh man, just play this instead, play this instead, play this instead, play this instead. And I just think I think this is honestly just one of the more underwhelming games to come out this generation, which sucks for PS5 because we're getting like so much fewer of these now, and it sucks having to wait a whole fucking year to get a brand new like big PS5 exclusive, like single player exclusive, and it's like this disposable and underwhelming. So anyway, thank you so much for watching. If you like what you see, subscribe. Let me know what you think about Marvel Spider-Man 2. And as always, I am Razorblade Mango. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all later. Bye.